I don't rent to filthy black strays. Get out before I toss you both out like the trash you are. The sentence sliced through the cool Sunday morning air, sharp enough to stop Dorothy Davis in her tracks. Her Bible, still warm from the service they'd just left, nearly slipped from her trembling hands. Her husband, Benjamin, stood beside her, 72 years old, pressed suit, polished shoes, posture straight as a young man despite the ache that lived in his knees. He froze. Those words, ugly, poisonous, hit him harder than any fist could have. Blocking their doorways stood Vincent Hartley, 35, pale as printer paper, gold watch flashing in the sun. The landlord. The man who had inherited Ridgewood Terrace apartments from his father and arrived last month announcing changes that no one trusted but everyone feared. Vincent looked Benjamin up and down, his lip curling like he smelled rotten food. "You think because you've been here 23 years you've earned something?" he scoffed. "This building is for a higher class of tenant now, not for people like you, not for charity cases. Definitely not for—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The silence said the rest. Dorothy's eyes filled. Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet and devastating. She wasn't a woman who cried easily, not through sickness, not through loss, not even through the hardest years of their marriage. But something about the humiliation delivered so casually, so hatefully, cracked something inside her. Benjamin reached for her hand. His own shook. He had lived long enough to see changes in the world, some good, some hard-fought, some painfully slow. But he had not expected, at 72, to hear a young white man half his age talk to him like this, not after a lifetime of playing by every rule society demanded. But what Vincent Hartley didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have imagined, was who stood behind Benjamin and Dorothy Davis. Their son. The child they had taken in at 6 years old, raised with love, disciplined with kindness, guided with faith. The boy who grew into something the world never expected a poor foster kid from West End to become. A federal judge. Judge Isaiah Davis. And 1 week before this awful confrontation, in apartment 4B, the Davis home had been wrapped in the peaceful warmth of routine, utterly unaware of the storm about to break. The Davis apartment was modest, but it glowed with the love of a lifetime. Nothing was new, but everything was cared for. The kind of care that came from hands that scrubbed, polished, dusted, and straightened with pride. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. 23 years of family memories lived inside those walls. A lifetime quilted into a place where they had survived the hard and celebrated the good. Where they had prayed. Where they had healed. Where they had raised a boy who had given them every reason to hold their heads high. Benjamin sat by the window in his favorite recliner, the one with duct tape on the left arm and stitching that Dorothy repaired by hand. Morning sunlight washed over him as he read the newspaper slowly, his coffee steaming on the table beside him. He wasn't a fast reader, never had been. He liked to take his time, savor each page like it was a conversation with an old friend. But today a headline punched him in the gut. Housing discrimination on the rise. Elderly and minority tenants targeted in illegal evictions. He adjusted his glasses and read every word. landlords forging violations, turning off heat, losing rent checks that were never lost, elderly tenants pushed out with nowhere to go, black families targeted, cornered, priced out, bullied into leaving. Benjamin's jaw tightened. "That's evil," he murmured under his breath. He folded the paper shut. His stomach twisted with unease, but he pushed the feeling away. Not here, he thought. Not us. They had been perfect tenants for over 2 decades. They had never missed a payment, never caused a moment of trouble. Some things, he believed, were still sacred, still safe. Dorothy hummed softly in the kitchen, moving from plant to plant with the gentleness of someone tending to children. She loved those plants. They made her feel like spring lived in their home year-round. Her geraniums glowed red on the windowsill. Her African violets shimmered in purple clusters along the counter. Her herbs flourished: rosemary, basil, thyme, used in the Sunday dinners she made with love and careful seasoning. Dorothy Davis cooked like she prayed, daily, faithfully, with intention. She paused, just as she did every morning in front of the refrigerator. Pinned to the door was a photograph that meant more to her than her wedding china or the quilt her mother had made by hand. Isaiah, 24 years old, wearing his law school graduation gown, smiling so brightly you could almost hear the laughter behind it. His arms wrapped around both of them. Dorothy's head rested on his shoulder. Benjamin's hand was on his back. Underneath the photo, Dorothy had written with her old church lady cursive, Isaiah, Law School Graduation 2001.
She touched the edge of the photo, her fingertip lingering on Isaiah's face. "My baby," she whispered. She remembered every step it took to get him there. The nights tutoring him at the kitchen table, the days Benjamin worked overtime to pay for books, the tears when he said he wanted to quit, the joy when he decided not to, the pride when he stood on that stage, diploma in hand, eyes shining like a sunrise. Then came the clerkship, then the prosecutor's office, then the federal appointment. Isaiah had flown miles beyond anything they ever dreamed for him. He called every Sunday, sent flowers every Mother's Day, visited whenever work allowed. Benjamin still kept the article announcing Isaiah's judgeship folded neatly in his Bible. But Dorothy kept the real treasure, the memory of the terrified 6-year-old who clung to her the first night he arrived, hungry, bruised, grieving, angry, and how she had held him while he cried into her dress. Isaiah was theirs, not by blood, by love, and that bond was stronger. Dorothy closed the fridge, wiping a tear she didn't want Benjamin to see. Because even in all of that love, a shadow lingered. Her husband's health had begun to falter, her own strength wasn't what it used to be. The rent had risen twice in the last year, and the new landlord, with his slicked-back hair and cold smile, had begun asking questions that made her uneasy. "Do you two have somewhere else to go? Any family who can take you in? Got a plan for when this place changes hands?" Questions that didn't feel like curiosity. They felt like warnings. She tried not to think about it, not today, not on a peaceful Sunday morning with her plants thriving and her husband reading and sunlight stretching across the floor like gold ribbon. But in her chest, beneath the rhythm of her heartbeat, a seed of worry sprouted. Down the hall a door slammed. Heavy footsteps stomped past their apartment. Loud voices echoed. The new landlord was here again. Dorothy stiffened. She walked to the living room and stood beside her husband, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ben," she whispered. He looked up. "You think everything's all right?" she asked quietly. Benjamin gave her a reassuring smile, one he'd perfected over their 47 years together. "As long as I'm here, you got nothing to fear." He squeezed her hand. But Dorothy heard the faint tremor in his voice. Something was coming. Something big. Something ugly. And they had no idea that in 7 days their entire world would shatter. That everything they had built, every memory in this home, every piece of peace they treasured would be threatened. No idea that a man named Vincent Hartley had already decided their fate. No idea that rage, greed, and racism were headed straight for their door. And no idea that the sun they raised, the boy who once hid behind Dorothy's skirt, would soon rise like a storm the world was not prepared for. Because 1 week later, on that cruel Sunday morning, Vincent Hartley would make a fatal mistake. He thought an elderly black couple was easy to evict. He had no idea he had just declared war on a federal judge.
The morning after church felt strangely heavy, as though the air itself sensed something coming. Benjamin woke before dawn, long before Dorothy's alarm chime would have softly filled the bedroom. He sat at the edge of the bed, rubbing his knees the way he always did, waiting for the ache to settle before he stood. It didn't. Age had crept up quietly, like a thief, and some mornings it felt as if his own bones were arguing with him. He pushed himself to his feet anyway. He had never been the type of man to let pain win. He walked to the kitchen, flipped on the light, and filled the old kettle that whistled when it boiled because its handle was too loose to fix. He made coffee for Dorothy first, the way he had every morning of their 47-year marriage. 2 sugars, a splash of creamer, stirred counterclockwise. She believed it tasted different that way. He didn't argue. He never did. The apartment was still dark, quiet, peaceful. But as Benjamin stood by the window, sipping his own coffee, he saw something that made him pause. A black SUV parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine running. At 5:42 a.m. He frowned. Ridgewood Terrace wasn't the kind of place that attracted expensive vehicles or people with business at dawn. He watched for a moment, waiting for someone to step out. No one did. He tried to shake off the unease crawling along his spine. Probably nothing, he thought. Probably a neighbor's visitor, probably someone lost, probably just paranoia after yesterday's confrontation. He didn't want to tell Dorothy. Not yet. Not until he was sure it meant something. She joined him a little after 6, hair wrapped in her satin scarf, wearing her pink robe with the embroidered D on the pocket, the one Isaiah bought her years ago. "Morning, sweetheart," she murmured, kissing his cheek as she reached for her coffee. But she noticed his face immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, baby," Benjamin lied gently. "Just thinking." Dorothy looked out the window. The SUV was gone. She saw nothing unusual, but the worry in her husband's eyes stayed with her like a shadow. At 9:15 a.m., a knock thundered at the door, the kind that wasn't polite, wasn't neighborly, wasn't even respectful. Benjamin opened it slowly. Vincent Hartley stood on the threshold with a clipboard in hand and a smirk that made Dorothy instinctively step closer to her husband. "Well, well," Vincent said brightly. "Good morning, tenants." Benjamin didn't reply. Dorothy's jaw tightened. Vincent's tone was fake friendly, dripping with sarcasm like grease sliding off a cheap burger. He wore a crisp polo shirt and loafers with no socks, the look of a man who dressed rich but worked for nothing. "I'm here to let you know," Vincent continued, tapping the clipboard, "that the building is officially under renovation. New systems, new policies, new tenants." Benjamin kept his voice calm. "We've lived here a long time, Mr. Hartley." "What kind of renovations?" "Oh, nothing major," Vincent said dismissively. "Just a full upgrade of absolutely everything. Which means," he paused dramatically, leaning forward, "certain tenants may need to vacate for safety reasons." Dorothy's breath hitched. "Vacate," she whispered. "For how long?" Vincent shrugged smugly. "Depends.
Could be a month, could be 6, could be indefinitely. Benjamin steadied Dorothy with a hand on her back. We pay rent on time, we follow every rule, we've never given anyone a problem, he said firmly. You can't just push us out because you feel like it. Oh, I can, Vincent said. The triumph in his voice made Dorothy's stomach twist. Benjamin's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Anyway, Vincent chirped, I'll be sending notices later today, so don't get too comfortable. He turned to leave, but paused on purpose, leaning close enough that Benjamin could see the arrogance glinting in his eyes. You two should have moved out years ago. Places like this aren't for people like you anymore. The words were quiet, but the cruelty was loud. Then Vincent walked down the hall, whistling as though he had just given them a polite weather update. As soon as he was gone, Dorothy sank into a dining chair. Ben, she voice broke, we can't lose our home. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. I'm not going to let that happen, he whispered. I've protected us our whole life. I won't stop now. But what if he won't win? How can you be sure? Benjamin hesitated, not because he doubted himself, but because he knew exactly what she was asking. They had always been proud, always tried to fight their own battles, always tried to avoid leaning too heavily on Isaiah, even though he'd repeatedly asked to carry the weight for them. But Dorothy's voice trembled when she said, Should we call him? Silence filled the kitchen. Benjamin looked toward the refrigerator, toward Isaiah's smiling photo, their son, their miracle, the boy they raised to be strong, wise, unbreakable. He swallowed. Not yet, he finally said. We call him when we know for certain this man is trying to remove us. I don't want to worry him without reason. Dorothy nodded, though her eyes stayed glossy with fear. At 11:07 a.m., Benjamin found the notice taped to their door. Bright red, bold letters, unmistakable. Mandatory temporary relocation, immediate. Dorothy gasped when she saw it. No, 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 no! Benjamin tore it off, hands shaking with anger. Temporary relocation for safety concerns? Temporary relocation with no guarantee of return? Temporary relocation effective in 14 days? Dorothy grabbed his arm. Ben, what do we do? Benjamin stared at the paper like it was poison. He read every line twice. Then a third time. Vincent's signature was at the bottom, a sloppy scrawl that looked more like a threat than a name. Benjamin opened the door again. Across the hall, 2 more notices. Down the corridor, another, all taped to apartments belonging to elderly tenants, all to people of color, all to people who couldn't fight back. It wasn't renovation, it was cleansing, a purge, a plan, a deliberate move to push them out so Vincent could raise the rent and bring in higher-class tenants. Benjamin's breath shook. Get your phone, Dorothy, he said softly. Why? Because now we call our son. Judge Isaiah Davis didn't pick up the first time, or the second. He was in Washington for a federal conference, but when he finally called back 20 minutes later, his voice was warm and cheerful. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. How was church? Dorothy burst into tears. Benjamin closed his eyes, pain slicing through him. What happened? Isaiah demanded. His tone snapped instantly from loving son to trained judge who had heard too many stories like this. Benjamin cleared his throat. It's the landlord, son. What about him? This morning, he issued a notice. Says we have to move. Says it's for safety. Silence on the line. A tense, heavy, knowing silence. Let me see the notice, Isaiah said. His voice was no longer warm. It was cold, professional, edged with steel. Take a picture, send it to me now. Benjamin snapped a photo and sent it. 20 seconds later, the phone rang again. Isaiah didn't bother with pleasantries this time. Dad, Mom, he spoke slowly, deliberately. This notice is illegal. Dorothy's breath caught. Illegal? Yes, Isaiah said. Every part of it. He's targeting you, and I know exactly why." Benjamin swallowed. Race? Race, age, length of tenancy. It's financial discrimination and racial discrimination rolled into one. Dorothy covered her mouth. Benjamin lowered himself shakily into his chair. Isaiah continued, voice dropping into a tone his parents had heard only in courtrooms or news interviews. "I'm on the first flight home." Dorothy exhaled a sob. Benjamin closed his eyes in relief. "No one," Isaiah said, "is putting my parents out of their home." He paused. "And Dad, Mom?" "Yes, baby," Dorothy whispered. "Don't be afraid. You're not fighting this alone." Benjamin's hands finally stopped shaking, because the one thing Vincent Hartley never imagined was that the elderly couple he tried to bully had a son who could dismantle him legally, publicly, and permanently. And the fight had only just begun.
Benjamin didn't sleep that night. He lay still beside Dorothy, staring up at the faint glow of the street lamp bleeding through the curtains. Cars passed once in a while, their headlights gliding across the ceiling in slow arcs. His mind wouldn't quiet, not even for a moment. Every word Vincent Hartley had thrown at them replayed like a cruel echo he couldn't shut off. Dirty black trash, garbage, welfare case. Benjamin had lived through racism in the South long before Atlanta became the city it was now. He had lived through slurs hurled from passing trucks, insults whispered in grocery store aisles, neighbors who looked right through him like he didn't exist. But somehow, hearing it there, in the building he had kept alive through decades of rent, repairs he paid for himself, neighborly favors, and quiet dignity, it cut deeper. Maybe because they were old now. Maybe because he wasn't as strong as he used to be. Maybe because if anyone ever deserved to be treated with respect, just basic human respect, it was Dorothy. Sweet, gentle Dorothy, who had never harmed a soul. He hadn't told Isaiah. He didn't want to. Didn't want his son's life polluted by that kind of ugliness. Didn't want Isaiah, with all his power and position, descending into the mess of their landlord's cruelty. Benjamin believed in the old ways, the older virtues, handled trouble quietly, humbly, with patience when possible, and prayer when necessary. But tonight, prayer felt small compared to the weight pressing against his chest. Across the room, Dorothy was awake too. He could tell from her breathing, slow, but not slow enough to belong to sleep. She turned slightly toward him. "Benny?" "Yes?" "You're thinking too loud." He couldn't help a soft laugh. She'd been saying that to him for nearly 50 years. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know you're scared. I am too, but we'll find a way. God didn't carry us this far to drop us now." Her hand moved across the sheets until she found his. He held it tightly. "We've been through worse. But not when we were this old," Benjamin said quietly. "You got your health problems. We don't have the strength to be moving again. I can't carry everything like I used to." Dorothy smiled in the dark, and he felt the warmth her presence always brought. "You don't gotta carry it alone." He kissed her knuckles, and they fell back into a heavy silence. Down the hallway, on the living room wall, the photo of their son hung in the dim light. Tall, proud, joyful Isaiah Davis, a boy they had found when he was 9 years old, small, quiet, and angry at a world that had never chosen him, until they did. They gave them their lives, he gave them his. And now, he was a federal judge. Benjamin rolled onto his side, staring toward the living room doorway. The photo frame caught a glimmer from the streetlight, shining like a tiny beacon. Maybe he needed to know. But Benjamin still hesitated. He is so busy, so important, always traveling, always speaking, always fighting for justice for people he don't even know. I don't want to burden him with our troubles, he told himself. Isaiah had made a life filled with power and responsibility, burdens Benjamin couldn't even imagine. What right did he have to add more? The next morning arrived slower than usual, with the sun crawling over the tops of the buildings as if unsure whether it wanted to mark the beginning of another day in Ridgewood Terrace.
Benjamin rose quietly, careful not to wake Dorothy, and moved to the kitchen to start coffee. He didn't turn on the radio, didn't open the newspaper, didn't want any more reminders of the same world that had spat on them yesterday. He sat at the small kitchen table and stared at his hands, hands that once were steady, strong, sure. Now they trembled faintly, not just from age, but from fear. Fear. A feeling he hadn't known since the days when he walked home from school past streets that weren't safe for a boy with his skin color. He hated that the feeling was back. A soft shuffle behind him. Dorothy entered the room wearing her pink robe and slippers, her gray hair wound in soft curls. She gave him a look, the kind that saw straight into the heart of a thing. "You didn't sleep." "I slept some." "No, you didn't." He sighed. "Coffee's ready." She sat across from him, studying his face with that Sunday school patience she had perfected long ago. "You need to call Isaiah." Benjamin stiffened. "I don't want to trouble him." "It's not trouble, it's family. He works too hard. He's got important cases. He don't need to hear about what? Our parents being called trash? Being threatened? Our home being taken?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. Dorothy reached across the table and took his hand. "You've protected us our whole lives, Benny. Let somebody protect you for once." He shut his eyes, fighting the instinct to resist, to keep things quiet, dignified, and contained. He had always been the rock, always been the protector, always been the person who solved problems before they reached anyone else. But maybe he couldn't carry this one alone. Dorothy stood up, walked to the phone on the kitchen wall, lifted the receiver, and held it out to him without a word. He stared at it. The phone seemed to weigh 500 pounds. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. "Do not let your pride ruin us." Benjamin took the receiver. Dialed. Held the phone to his ear. It rang once. Twice.
3 times. Then, "Dad?" Isaiah's voice came through, warm and bright and full of life. "Hey, everything okay?" For a moment, Benjamin couldn't speak. "Dad?" Isaiah repeated, tone sharpening with instinctive concern. "Are you there?" Benjamin swallowed hard. "I'm here, son." "What's wrong?" Benjamin inhaled deeply. And then, for the first time since the horrible moment on Sunday morning, he told the truth out loud. It's our landlord. He said something to us yesterday. Something ugly. And he's trying to force us out." The silence on the other end of the line changed instantly, hardening, tightening, sharpening like steel being drawn. "What did he say?" Isaiah asked, voice suddenly calm in the way a surgeon is calm before a critical incision, or a judge before delivering a sentence. Benjamin hesitated. Dorothy touched his shoulder from behind. "Tell him," she whispered. So he did. Every word, every insult, every threat, every humiliation. By the time he finished, tears had formed in Dorothy's eyes again, but this time they weren't the quiet tears of fear. They were the tears of release, the tears that came when the burden finally started lifting. Isaiah didn't speak for several seconds. Benjamin could almost hear his son's breath steadying, the way it used to when he prepared for debate competitions or difficult cases. Then Isaiah said very quietly, "Dad, Mom, I need you both to listen to me." "We're listening," Benjamin whispered. "No one, and I mean no one, threatens my family." Benjamin's breath caught. Isaiah wasn't done. "I'm flying to Atlanta tonight." Dorothy covered her mouth. Her shoulders shook. "Son, you don't have to," Benjamin began.
Isaiah cut him off for the first time in months. Yes, I do. Another breath, colder this time. What's this man's name? Vincent Hartley. I could hear the sound of a pen writing something down, fast and furious. Good, Isaiah said. I'll handle him. Isaiah! Dad. His son's voice softened instantly, melting from steel into something warm, tender, and fiercely devoted. You took me in when nobody else wanted me. You gave me a home. You gave me a name. You gave me a life. Please, let me give something back. Benjamin's throat tightened too much for him to speak. Dorothy took the phone. We love you, baby. I love you too, Mom. Another pause. Pack nothing. Touch nothing. Don't sign anything. Don't talk to that man again. I'll be there by morning. The call ended. Benjamin stared at the phone in his hand for a long moment. Dorothy leaned against his shoulder, relief loosening every muscle in her body. Their son was coming home. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time since Sunday morning, they had hope.
Isaiah landed in Atlanta just after sunrise. He didn't wait for checked baggage. He didn't stop for coffee. He walked straight through the terminal with the same stride that had carried him into federal courtrooms for 15 years, measured, powerful, unshakably controlled. But beneath the surface of that composure, something darker burned. He had listened to every word his parents described. He had replayed them during the entire flight, the insults, the threats, the arrogance of a man who believed an elderly black couple could be stripped of dignity without consequence. It ignited a fury Isaiah hadn't felt since he was a child, fighting to survive a foster system indifferent to kids like him. His parents had raised him to believe in justice, not vengeance. But justice didn't mean softness. It didn't mean silence. It meant accountability. Isaiah stepped out of the terminal into the cool morning air and called a rideshare. When the car pulled up to Ridgewood Terrace, the sun hung low, turning the brick buildings gold. They looked smaller than he remembered, older, worn down by years of neglect. He saw the peeling paint on the stair railings, the cracked pavement, the broken security light that hadn't been replaced in years. His parents had been paying rent faithfully for 23 years, and this was what they lived under? His jaw tightened. As he approached their apartment, the door opened before he could knock. Dorothy was there, eyes full of worry and hope, her hands trembling just a little. "Baby," she breathed. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, lifting her slightly despite her protests. "Careful," she murmured, laughing through tears. "I ain't as light as I used to be." "You're perfect," Isaiah whispered into her hair. When he set her down, Benjamin stood behind her, shoulders a little straighter now that his son was home. His eyes glistened, though he tried to hide it. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, son." They hugged. A long, firm embrace that said everything neither man could speak without breaking. "You tell your boss you taken time off?" Benjamin asked, half joking, half nervous. "I'm the boss." Dorothy swatted his arm playfully. "Don't be boastin'." "Sorry," he said, but his smile faded quickly. "Where is he?" Benjamin hesitated. "Probably in his office. He gets here early some mornings." Isaiah nodded. "Good. I want to catch him off guard." Dorothy's hand flew to her chest. "Now hold on, Isaiah. You can't just storm in." "I'm not storming. I'm confronting. There's a difference." Benjamin stepped forward. "Son, listen. I'm grateful you're here, but don't put your career on the line for us." Isaiah looked at him, really looked at him, and something inside him cracked open. "You two are the reason I have a career. You saved my life. All I'm doing is returning the favor." Benjamin opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Isaiah stepped back, straightened his shoulders, and headed for the hallway. When he reached the front door, Dorothy called after him, "Baby, don't let him drag you down to his level." Isaiah turned. "Oh, I won't. I'm bringing him up to mine." The landlord's office sat on the first floor of Building C, a small glass front room with blinds half closed and an old sign taped to the door. Property Manager, V. Hartley. Isaiah didn't knock. He opened the door and walked in. Vincent Hartley looked up from his desk with a lazy annoyance, his feet propped up on a stack of eviction notices. He was younger than Isaiah expected, mid-30s maybe, with slick blonde hair and the smug self-assurance of a man who had never been told no in his life. "Who's the—" Isaiah began. "Are you Vincent Hartley?" Isaiah asked, voice calm, even, polite. Hartley smirked. "Who's asking?" Isaiah didn't answer immediately. He stepped forward, closed the door behind him, and removed a business card from his pocket. He placed it on Hartley's desk. Hartley snorted. "I don't need your—" He glanced down and froze. The card read, "Honorable Isaiah J. Davis, United States District Judge, Northern District of Georgia." Hartley's smirk vanished so quickly it was almost comical. Isaiah took the seat across from him, crossing one leg over the other. "We're going to have a conversation, and you're going to listen. Understand?" Hartley swallowed. His voice shrank. I don't know what you—" Isaiah raised one finger. "Stop." The room went silent. "I know exactly what happened. You verbally assaulted my parents. You threatened them. You targeted them because they're elderly. And you felt entitled to do it because they're black." Hartley flinched, but tried to recover. "Look, with all due respect—" "No," Isaiah interrupted. "You don't get that phrase. You don't get respect from me until you've earned it. And you're a long, long way from that." Hartley's lips parted, but no sound came out. Isaiah leaned forward. "Your actions violate multiple state and federal laws, fair housing statutes, elder abuse regulations, civil rights protections, and on top of that, I have witnesses, my parents, their neighbors, several residents who've already given statements. I also have a recording." Hartley stiffened. A recording?" Isaiah smiled coldly. "You think elderly folks don't know how to hit the record button on a phone?" Hartley's face drained of color. Isaiah continued, voice still smooth. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cease every eviction threat immediately. You're going to issue written apologies to my parents. You're going to provide their rent ledger showing their perfect payment history. And you're going to fix every code violation in this building, starting this week." Hartley blinked. You can't force me." Isaiah placed the folder on the desk. "This is a federal complaint drafted on the plane. I can file it today. It names you personally, not your company, you." Hartley's breath hitched. "It includes punitive damages," Isaiah added softly. "Lots of zeros. Enough to touch whatever assets you've been hiding from taxes. Should I keep going?" Hartley's voice cracked. "Judge Davis, I didn't mean—" Isaiah slammed his palm on the desk. The sound cracked through the small office like a gunshot. "You meant every word. You thought my parents were powerless. You thought they were expendable. You thought they were easy to break because they're old and black." Isaiah stood slowly, towering over the desk. "But you forgot something." He leaned down until his face was inches from Hartley's. "But they have a son." Hartley couldn't look away. "A son who is not afraid of men like you. A son who has spent his career dismantling racist, predatory systems built by people who think the law is a weapon. Well, it is. And today, it's pointed at you." Hartley swallowed so hard it was audible. Isaiah walked to the door, paused, and looked back. "You have 24 hours to comply with everything I just said. If you don't, I'll make sure you never manage so much as a doghouse again." Then Isaiah stepped out, letting the door close behind him with a soft click, far more terrifying than a slam. When he returned upstairs, Benjamin and Dorothy were waiting on the couch, hands clasped tightly. Dorothy stood first. "Are you okay, baby?" Isaiah nodded once. "Yes, Mama." Benjamin looked at him with a mixture of awe and fear. "What did you do?" Isaiah exhaled deeply. "I gave him a choice." The older couple exchanged a glance, one of relief, one of disbelief, one of faith restored after being shaken to its core. Dorothy touched Isaiah's face gently. "You didn't lose your temper?" Isaiah said, "No, but I didn't let him keep his power either." Benjamin laughed, a short, stunned sound. "That's my boy." Isaiah smiled faintly.
"He underestimated you," Dorothy whispered. "He underestimated all of us," Isaiah corrected. And for the first time since the nightmare began, Benjamin felt safe again. The next morning began quietly, suspiciously quietly, for Ridgewood Terrace. Benjamin woke early, as he always did, but there was something different in the air, something lighter. The usual heaviness, the dread of seeing Hartley lurking around the building like a shadow, was gone. Outside, the building hummed with unfamiliar energy. People whispering in the hall, doors opening and closing, footsteps moving quickly, phone screens lighting up. Word had spread. By 8 a.m., the entire complex knew that the old couple in 4B had a son who was a federal judge, and that he had confronted Hartley the previous day in a way no one else had dared. But rumors were only half the story. The real fallout began at 8:17 a.m., because that was the moment a black SUV pulled into the lot, followed by a white city car marked Inspections and Code Enforcement. Benjamin parted the blinds with 2 fingers. "Dot." "Come here and look." Dorothy shuffled over, adjusting her robe. "What is it?" She froze when she saw the vehicles. "Lord have mercy, he didn't waste any time." "Looks that way," Benjamin murmured. They watched as 2 uniformed inspectors stepped out with clipboards, cameras, and grim expressions. A moment later, a third man climbed out, tall, well-dressed, and wearing the look of someone who expected to find problems, because he knew they were there. "This building hasn't passed a code check in years," Benjamin whispered. "Not with all the leaks, mold, broken lights." Dorothy elbowed him softly. "Hush now, don't jinx it." Just then, a door across the courtyard opened, and Mrs. Reddick, a grandmother in her late 60s, leaned out with her bonnet still half on. "Benji! Dot!" she hollered, waving wildly. "Baby Isaiah done shook the whole tree. They fallen out of the branches." Dorothy covered her mouth to hide the laugh. "That woman is too much." Before Benjamin could respond, the inspectors entered Building A. Doors cracked open to watch them. Whispers floated from every direction. "They checkin' wiring. They finally checkin' the plumbing. Praise God. He gonna fail hard. That slum been illegal for years. You think they'll shut him down? Better hope so." For the first time in a long time, the tenants weren't afraid. They were hopeful. Across town, in a cramped office above a smoothie shop, Vincent Hartley sat hunched over his desk. His eyes were bloodshot. His suit was wrinkled. His phone had been buzzing nonstop since dawn. His partner, a man named Craig, with a cheap tie and an even cheaper sense of integrity, paced behind him like a caged hyena. "This is bad, Vince," Craig hissed. "Real bad. A federal judge? You didn't tell me they had connections." "How was I supposed to know?" Hartley snapped. "They look like—" He stopped himself too late. Craig raised an eyebrow. "They look like what, exactly?" Hartley clenched his jaw. "Like people who wouldn't fight back." "Well, congratulations. You picked the wrong ones this time." Hartley rubbed his temples. "He said he had a recording. Statements. Witnesses." Craig slammed a hand on the desk. "Damn it, Vince. Do you know what that means? We can't just handle this quietly." Hartley swallowed. I got 24 hours. That's what he said. 24 to do what? Fix decades of code violations? Apologize? He'll still sue. Hartley grabbed the folder Isaiah had left on his desk the day before, the federal complaint form. He stared at it, sweating. He's serious. He wasn't bluffing. No, Craig said grimly. He wasn't. Hartley shoved back from his chair. I'll call the city. Maybe if we get ahead of the inspection. Craig laughed bitterly. Vince, the inspectors are already there. Hartley froze. What? They called us. Said they're doing a surprise audit today. Hartley's stomach sank. No. Craig leaned in, lowering his voice. We might lose the entire property. Hartley's hands shook. What am I supposed to do? Craig stared at him, then shrugged. Try apologizing. For once in your life. Hartley flinched, as though the idea physically hurt him. Back at Ridgewood Terrace, Isaiah sat with his parents at their small kitchen table. Breakfast was simple, toast, eggs, and fruit, but Dorothy insisted on making it, even though Isaiah offered to take her out somewhere nicer. I like feeding my boy, she said, pouring him coffee. Ain't got many chances anymore. Isaiah smiled softly. Then I'll eat as much as you want. She beamed. Benjamin, however, was tense. He kept glancing toward the window, shoulders stiff, eyes narrowed. You're waiting for him, Isaiah noted. Benjamin sighed. I'm waiting for something. A man like that, he don't take being challenged lightly. Isaiah reached across the table and squeezed his father's arm. Dad, you're safe, I promise. Benjamin nodded, but his hands still shook slightly. Old wounds healed slowly, especially wounds carved by racism, fear, and decades of being treated like less than human. Just then, a knock echoed through the apartment. 3 sharp taps. Dorothy nearly dropped her coffee mug. Oh, Lord. Isaiah stood immediately. Stay seated. He walked calmly to the door, checked the peephole, and smirked. It's him. Benjamin inhaled sharply. Dorothy clutched her robe tighter. Isaiah opened the door. Vincent Hartley stood there, shoulders hunched, eyes darting like a cornered animal. He held a stack of papers in one sweaty hand, and a forced smile stretched across his face. Judge Davis, may I come in? Isaiah didn't move. What do you want? Hartley swallowed. I wanted to talk. You have 30 seconds, Isaiah said coolly. Right. Well, I wanted to clarify some things from the other day. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Isaiah lifted an eyebrow. Yes, of course. I may have been impatient. Perhaps the tone... Tone? Isaiah repeated. Hartley winced. Inside, Benjamin whispered, Lord, give me strength. Dorothy muttered, Tone my foot. Isaiah stepped closer until he was inches from Hartley, not threatening, just present, just unyielding. Let's be clear, Isaiah said softly. You insulted my parents. You threatened them. You targeted them because of their age and their race. Don't reduce it to tone. Hartley's face burned with embarrassment. I'm sorry. The apology was small, cheap, forced. Benjamin shook his head from the table. Man ain't sorry. Man scared. Dorothy elbowed him. Shh. But Isaiah didn't hide his reaction. He let the silence sit heavy between them. For the record, Isaiah said finally, your apology is meaningless. I don't want your words. I want your actions.
Hartley thrust the papers toward him.
These are the actions: the formal withdrawal of any eviction notices, and a document acknowledging their perfect payment history. Isaiah took the papers, scanned them, and nodded. Good. Now for the rest. Hartley blinked. Rest? The building repairs, the discrimination report, the compliance meeting I asked for. Hartley's breath stammered. That will take time. You have the resources, Isaiah said. You've been taking rent from these tenants for years. You owe them. Hartley looked past Isaiah, into the apartment, at the faded furniture, the framed photos, the plants Dorothy nurtured, the home built on love rather than money. For a moment, a fleeting, flickering moment, something like shame crossed his face. I'll do better, he whispered. Isaiah eyed him carefully, weighing the sincerity. Benjamin watched from the table, his expression unreadable. Dorothy prayed silently. Finally, Isaiah stepped back. Then start now. Hartley nodded quickly, retreating down the hall, nearly stumbling in his rush to leave. When Isaiah closed the door, Benjamin exhaled shakily. Well, that's done. Isaiah shook his head. No, that was only the first domino. Dorothy frowned. Baby, what you mean? Isaiah looked between them. Men like him don't fall quietly. And as if summoned by his words, a distant shout echoed from the courtyard. Then another. Then someone screamed, Fire! Building B is on fire! Isaiah's head snapped toward the window. Dorothy gasped. Benjamin froze. And in that instant, the quiet morning shattered, and the true fallout began.
Chaos didn't rise slowly. It erupted. Screams ricocheted through the courtyard as smoke billowed from the second-floor windows of Building B. The acrid scent of burning plastic and old insulation hit the air like a punch. Dorothy clutched her chest. Dear God! Dear God! Benjamin stood so quickly his chair toppled behind him. That's Mrs. Reddick's floor. Isaiah was already moving. He sprinted to the door, threw it open, and leapt down the stairs 2 at a time. Tenants poured from their apartments in robes, bare feet, pajamas, some carrying children, some holding nothing at all. Move away from the building, someone yelled. Call the fire department. They're already on the way. Isaiah reached Building B as thick smoke rippled out through the open stairwell. A teenage boy pushed past him, coughing. It started in the laundry room. It was fine 20 minutes ago, and then boom! Isaiah grabbed his shoulder. Who's still inside? The boy pointed upward, eyes wide. I think Mr. Hanley didn't get out. He walks with a cane. He's slow. But Isaiah was already running into the smoke. Benjamin shouted after him, Isaiah, son! But he was gone. Inside was hell. The air was a choking blanket, thick and hot. Isaiah pulled his shirt over his nose and pushed forward, feeling the heat intensify with every step. Mr. Hanley, he shouted, can you hear me? A faint banging sound echoed from down the hall. Isaiah followed it, nearly slipping on water that was already leaking from a burst pipe overhead. He found the old man pressed against a locked door, coughing violently. Judge, Hanley wheezed, I can't, the door! Isaiah rammed his shoulder into it once, twice. On the third hit, it burst open, and the 2 men stumbled forward into the stairwell. Come on, Isaiah said, slinging Hanley's arm over his shoulder. We're getting out. The hallway crackled as sparks shot from a burning outlet nearby. Isaiah tightened his grip. Step by step, he guided the old man down, the fire chasing them like a hungry beast. They burst out into the open air just as a fire truck roared into the lot. People screamed when they saw Isaiah carrying Mr. Hanley, soot-streaked, coughing hard. Dorothy stumbled forward, her eyes wet. Baby! Benjamin caught her arm. He's all right, Dot. Isaiah gently eased Hanley onto a patch of grass as firefighters rushed past. "Anyone else inside?" one shouted. Isaiah shook his head. "I don't think so." But he wasn't sure. No one was sure. As the flames were brought under control, neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering anxiously. Electrical fire, probably. No, this wasn't no accident. That laundry room been broken for years. I told you that wiring was dangerous. The landlord's gonna get sued to hell. You think Hartley's behind this? That last question spread through the courtyard like wildfire. And then the crowd parted, because Vincent Hartley had arrived. He pushed through the people, pale and shaking, eyes fixed on the burning building. What happened?" he stammered. Mrs. Reddick rounded on him. "You damn well know what happened. That building been a death trap for years. Y'all been complaining for months. You cut corners, Hartley. You cut corners, and now look what you done." Hartley held up his hands, trembling. I don't know anything yet. We need to wait for what?" a man shouted. "For somebody to die before you fix anything?" Benjamin stepped forward, Dorothy at his side. He leveled his eyes at Hartley, calm, unblemished, devastating. "This didn't have to happen," Benjamin said quietly. "You ignored us, all of us." Isaiah joined them, soot on his face, voice low and steady. "Fire marshals will run a full report, and if what I think is true, this will lead to a criminal investigation." Hartley flinched. "Judge Davis, please! This wasn't me!" Isaiah's expression didn't change. "I warned you yesterday that your negligence had consequences. You ignored me." Dorothy whispered. "He didn't ignore you, baby. He retaliated." Isaiah's head turned sharply towards her. "What do you mean?" Dorothy swallowed. "I saw one of his maintenance workers sneaking around Building B late last night, looked nervous, had some tools with him, and a gasoline can." The crowd gasped. All eyes swung to Hartley. He went white. I don't know anything about that." Isaiah stepped closer. "Who was the worker?" He stammered. Jameson, but he wouldn't do anything like—" Isaiah cut in. "Where is he now?" I don't know." Isaiah didn't blink. Convenient. Before Hartley could argue, a fire marshal approached. "Mr. Hartley, we need to speak with you." Hartley nodded, defeated, following the marshal away. The moment he was gone, tenants swarmed around Isaiah, Benjamin, and Dorothy. "Judge Davis, thank you. You saved Mr. Hanley's life. Please don't let him get away with this." A woman with tears in her eyes reached out and squeezed Dorothy's hand. "You deserve better than this. All of you do." Dorothy squeezed back. "We just want a safe home, honey." "But you won't have that here," Isaiah said softly. Benjamin blinked. "What do you mean?" Isaiah turned toward the charred building, eyes darkening. "I mean, Hartley's retaliation won't stop with this. And now that he knows we're fighting back, it's going to get uglier." Dorothy shivered. "You think he'll try something else?" Isaiah nodded once. "Yes." Benjamin frowned, voice tense. "Son, what are we supposed to do?" Isaiah inhaled deeply, then exhaled slowly, his mind already turning like gears in a clock. "We're going to expose him. We're going to take him to court. We're going to make sure he never lays a finger on you or anyone in this building ever again." Dorothy's lip trembled. "Oh, baby, that's a big fight." Isaiah looked at them both with the same fierce love they saw the day he graduated law school, that fire inside him that refused to let the world crush the people he loved. "I've handled bigger," he said. Before they could respond, Mrs. Reddick hurried over with her phone in hand. "Judge, you need to see this." Isaiah took the phone, glanced down, and his jaw tightened. Because there, plastered across social media, was a post from an anonymous account. "Federal judge threatens landlord. Tenants cause fire to frame him." Hundreds of comments beneath it. Some sympathetic, many racist, all toxic. Dorothy's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Lord!" Benjamin shook his head in disbelief. Isaiah looked at the screen, then up at the smoke curling into the sky. "This," he whispered, "is the backlash. But don't worry," he handed the phone back to Mrs. Reddick. "I'm not done." And somewhere across Atlanta, in a dimly lit office, a man with a gasoline can sat quietly watching the same viral post on his cracked phone screen, smiling. Because he had been paid well. And he wasn't finished either.
By dawn, the smoke had settled, but the damage had not. Building B stood dark and skeletal, its windows gaping like broken teeth. The entire structure had been deemed temporarily unsafe, displacing 11 families. The courtyard buzzed with exhausted, murmured conversations, punctuated by sobs, coughing, and the hiss of cooling embers. Isaiah hadn't slept. He stood near the caution tape, arms folded, staring at the official fire report the marshal had handed him. His eyes scanned each line with the precision of a surgeon. Dorothy approached quietly, a blanket draped around her shoulders. "You been up all night again," she murmured. Isaiah didn't look away from the page. "I needed to see this." "What does it say?" He exhaled sharply, handing her the clipboard. "The fire didn't start in the laundry room," he said. "It started behind the wall. Faulty wiring, wiring that should have been replaced 8 years ago." Dorothy frowned. "And Hartley never did?" "No," Isaiah replied. "He ignored every citation, every warning." She clutched the blanket tighter. "So this was bound to happen." "Yes," he whispered, "but the timing, that's what bothers me." Dorothy met his eyes. "You think someone actually lit it?" Isaiah didn't answer, because he didn't have to. His silence said enough. 3 hours later, tenants gathered in the community center. The atmosphere was tense, charged with fear and fury. Mothers clutched babies, elderly neighbors leaned on walkers and canes. Young men paced in the back, restless. Hartley hadn't shown up. Of course he hadn't. Benjamin took a seat in the front row, Dorothy beside him, her eyes still puffy from smoke and worry. Isaiah stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a stack of printed documents in his hands. He didn't stand like a judge. He stood like a man who refused to let his community be burned out of existence. "Thank you for coming," he began. The room quieted. "We've been brushed aside for years," he said. "Your complaints ignored, your health put at risk, your families displaced. Yesterday's fire wasn't an accident. It was the result of systematic neglect." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, some cried, some clenched their fists. Isaiah continued, "But the fire changes everything. This gives us leverage Hartley didn't expect." A voice from the back called out, "Judge Davis, what kind of leverage? He's rich, we're not. He owns the property, we don't." Isaiah nodded slowly. "True, but he doesn't own the law." The crowd leaned in. He held up the fire report. "And this is evidence, not only of neglect, but of criminal liability." Gasps, whispers, hope flickered. Mrs. Reddick stood. "So what do we do now?" Isaiah's gaze swept the room. "We organize. We file a collective lawsuit. We contact federal housing authorities. We force inspections. We push for emergency relocation support. And if Hartley continues to retaliate, we press charges." His voice hardened. "And we win." The room erupted in murmurs of determination. But one person remained quiet. Benjamin. His head was lowered, thumb worrying the edge of his cane. Isaiah stepped toward him. "Dad, are you okay?" Benjamin swallowed, eyes glistening. "Son, I'm proud of you, you know that, but I'm scared too. Men like Hartley, they don't go down quietly." Isaiah placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "I know." Dorothy whispered, "Baby, they fight dirty.
And you're putting yourself in the middle." "I'm already in the middle," Isaiah replied softly. "So are you. So is everyone here. The difference is, I have tools, they don't." The room fell silent again, because behind Isaiah's calm voice was a storm. Dorothy sensed it. Benjamin sensed it. The entire room sensed it. Isaiah wasn't just angry. He was awakening. By dawn, news vans arrived. Headlines blared. "Residents blame landlord for massive fire." "Judge Davis speaks out. Negligence has a price." Anonymous posts target tenants as investigation widens. Reporters swarmed Isaiah as he stepped outside. "Judge Davis, is it true the tenants orchestrated the fire? Do you plan to file charges against Mr. Hartley? Are you compromised by your personal connection to the tenants?" At that last question, Isaiah stopped. He turned to the reporter, a woman with sleek hair and a crisp blazer. "I was a tenant here long before I was a judge," he said evenly. "My parents still are. And if standing with them compromises me, then your definition of justice is broken." The courtyard erupted in applause. The reporter lowered her mic. Isaiah stepped forward, voice steady. "The people here deserve safe housing. They deserve dignity, and they deserve the truth. So let me make something very clear." The camera zoomed in. "I don't answer to anonymous accounts. I don't answer to slumlords. I answer to the law." A cheer swept through the crowd. For the first time, fear shifted into something stronger. Momentum. Later, back inside the community center, Isaiah worked through forms with tenants, explaining rights and next steps. Mrs. Hanley approached him slowly. "My husband, he wants to speak with you." Isaiah followed her to where the older man sat, wrapped in a blanket, oxygen tank beside him. "Mr. Hanley," he said gently, "how are you holding up?" "Alive because of you," he croaked. Isaiah shook his head. "Because of quick thinking." Hanley pointed a trembling finger at him. "Don't make light of what you did. You didn't hesitate. You came into that building like a man who knew he belonged there, even when it was burning." Isaiah opened his mouth, but Hanley raised a hand. "There's something you need to hear." He glanced at his wife. "Tell him." She hesitated, then whispered, "Jameson, the one Dorothy saw? He's been bragging." Isaiah stilled. "Bragging about what?" Mrs. Hanley bit her lip. "Said Hartley told him he'd get a bonus if the ungrateful tenants got a wake-up call. Said it'd be easy to spark a fire in that old wiring. No one would know the difference." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "Where did he say this?" "Behind the bus stop, to some other workers." Mr. Hanley coughed violently before forcing out the words, "Judge, you need to stop him. Stop them before someone dies." Isaiah placed a hand on the frail man's shoulder. "I will," he promised. "But I need you to tell the fire investigators exactly what you just told me." The couple exchanged a glance, then nodded. "Good," Isaiah said. "This changes everything." That evening, Hartley's lawyer issued a statement. "My client had no involvement with the fire. Any claims otherwise are defamatory. We will pursue legal action against anyone spreading false allegations." Isaiah read the statement with a cold, quiet fury. Then his phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet, Judge. She could have been hurt." Isaiah froze, his blood iced. He typed back immediately. "Who is this?" No reply. Seconds later, a picture appeared. Taken from across the street, zoomed in, grainy. Dorothy. Sitting by the window, knitting. Completely unaware. Isaiah's chest constricted. This was no longer backlash. This was a threat. A direct one. Isaiah slipped the phone into his pocket, turned off the lamp, and stepped outside into the cooling night. The air felt heavier. The world felt smaller. And he whispered into the darkness, "You made a mistake." Because the turning point wasn't just the fire. It wasn't the investigation. It wasn't the threats or the lies or the headlines. The turning point was this moment. The moment a man who had always fought the law's battles finally realized this one was personal.
The message replayed in Isaiah's mind with every step he took through the quiet Atlanta night. You should have stayed quiet. She could have been hurt. A threat. Not subtle, not implied, direct. Cowardly. And stupid. Whoever sent it thought they understood intimidation. They thought fear worked the same on a federal judge as it did on a vulnerable tenant. They thought wrong. When Isaiah reached the parking lot, he dialed one number. Not the police, not the fire marshal. The U.S. Marshals Service. He explained everything in calm, clipped sentences. The fire, the harassment, the threats, the anonymous messages, the danger to his parents. When he finished, the voice on the other end said only 3 words. We're on it. Within the hour, unmarked cars circled the complex. 2 marshals stood guard outside Benjamin and Dorothy's apartment. Federal jurisdiction had arrived, and Hartley had just stepped into a fight he could never win. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the kind of sky that made cities feel smaller and secrets feel closer. Isaiah sat at the kitchen table with his parents. Dorothy stirred her tea, hands shaking slightly. Benjamin sat stiffly, arms folded, anger simmering beneath the surface. You didn't tell us someone threatened us, Dorothy whispered. I am telling you, Isaiah said gently. Now, and it's handled. Benjamin leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Handled how? Isaiah hesitated, not because he was unsure, but because the truth would shake them. I'm filing a judicial misconduct waiver, just in case, he said finally. Benjamin's face fell. You're stepping out of your post for this? No, Isaiah corrected softly. I'm stepping through it, so nothing I do can be used against the tenants later. Dorothy grasped his hand. Baby, don't sacrifice your career. Isaiah squeezed back. What is a career if I can't protect the people who raised me to earn it? Dorothy's eyes filled. Benjamin looked away, blinking hard. There were moments in a man's life that didn't belong to the law or the government or the badge he carried. There were moments that belonged solely to the soul. Isaiah was standing in one now. At 9:14 a.m., reporters swarmed outside the Fulton County Courthouse. Cameras whirred, microphones thrust forward. Whispers spread like shifting wind. Judge Davis filed something big. This is about the fire. This is going after Hartley. Are you pursuing federal involvement in the investigation? Do you believe the fire was intentional? Do you believe the landlord targeted your family? He stopped at the courthouse steps, expression solemn but unshakable. I'm not here as a judge today. Flashbulbs clicked. Then who are you here as? A reporter called. Isaiah's voice resonated through the crowd. I'm here as a son and as a citizen of this city. Silence crackled. He lifted a thick folder. This morning, I filed a petition for a full federal investigation into Ridgewood Terrace, including arson, housing discrimination, financial exploitation, tenant endangerment, and potential racketeering. Gasps rippled. Furthermore, I have submitted evidence, sworn statements, financial records, fire code violations, and footage that link Vincent Hartley and his employees to systematic abuse and criminal negligence. Reporters scrambled. And I'm requesting protective orders for every tenant. A murmur of shock swept through the crowd. Isaiah stepped closer, voice steady as granite. People think slumlords act with impunity. People think the elderly and poor have no protection. People think intimidation works. He paused. But those people forgot something. The cameras leaned in. They forgot some tenants have children who grow up to become federal judges. The crowd erupted. He walked inside. When Hartley heard the news, he stormed into his lawyer's office. This is harassment. This is retaliation. Does he think being a judge gives him the right to... He froze. A document slid across the desk. You're being subpoenaed. That's fine, he muttered. I'll lie. The attorney swallowed. No, Vincent. You don't understand. You're being subpoenaed by a federal task force. Hartley's smirk vanished. And that's bad? He whispered. Catastrophic, the lawyer breathed. Hartley collapsed into the chair. The attorney continued, voice trembling. They're investigating the fire as a federal crime. They have witness testimony claiming your worker was involved. They have audio clips. Hartley shot upright. Audio clips of what? The attorney closed his eyes. Of you discussing methods of encouragement to force tenants out. Hartley's mouth dried. No, no, no! And, the lawyer added, they received an anonymous tip this morning about your contractors tampering with wiring to make the building fail inspections. Hartley covered his face. This isn't happening. The lawyer exhaled. Oh, it's happening. Judge Davis's filing gives them jurisdiction, and they will tear your life apart. Hartley's heart pounded. He can't do this. He's biased. He recused himself. He stepped back from anything that touches your case. That makes his actions bulletproof. Hartley slumped. Then what do I do? The lawyer tapped the desk. You pray. Back at Ridgewood Terrace, something extraordinary was happening. Tenants gathered in the courtyard. Not to cry, not to fight, not to worry, but to stand together. Word had spread, too fast to track, that the Hartley empire was cracking. Federal investigators were present, marshals were on site, and Judge Davis had put the weight of the law behind them. Mrs. Reddick approached Dorothy with tears in her eyes. You raised a force of nature, she whispered. Dorothy smiled softly. I raised a boy who watched me get mistreated more times than I can count. He promised himself he'd change that someday. Benjamin stepped outside and was immediately wrapped in applause, cheers, even hugs. We're going to win this, a young mother told him. For you and Miss Dorothy. Benjamin blinked back tears he didn't bother hiding. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, he felt something bloom inside him. Safety. Respect. Belonging. Power. He took Dorothy's hand. We ain't victims no more. No, she breathed. We're not. 4 days later, the case broke open. An investigator approached Isaiah. We found it. Found what?
Isaiah braced. The man continued. Your testimony was right. The fire wasn't an accident. We have footage of Jameson behind the building pouring accelerant near the wiring panel. And we have recordings of Hartley authorizing a disruption to accelerate tenant displacement. Isaiah inhaled sharply. Are they in custody? Both. And the tenants? Protected. And the complex? Under federal management until the case concludes. Isaiah closed his eyes briefly. It was over. Or, rather, justice had begun. That evening, the community assembled for the last time before relocation. Tenants shared food, memories, laughter. Dorothy made peach cobbler. Benjamin told jokes. Kids ran across the courtyard without fear. Isaiah stood watching them, arms crossed loosely, a soft smile on his face. Dorothy approached and slipped her hand into his. "We're proud of you," she whispered. Benjamin nodded beside her. "Always have been, but today, more than ever." Isaiah swallowed, emotion rising. "You taught me everything I know." Dorothy shook her head. "No, baby," she said gently. "You learned it. We just lived it." The three of them stood together as the sun dipped behind the skyline. A family, a unit, unbroken, against a world that tried to break them. Isaiah looked out over the courtyard, once a battleground, now a celebration. Justice wasn't fast. Justice wasn't clean. Justice wasn't easy. But for the Davis family, and for the hundreds who'd been silently suffering, justice came. And it came with fire. Not the destructive kind, but the kind that forges something stronger, new, indestructible. "Let's go home," Isaiah said. And for the first time in a long time, they could say it without fear.